There's a tower in Shrek, surrounded by bones. Not one or two, dozens. Knights went in, none of them came back. And the movie never really explains why. You probably didn't question it. Because you thought you knew this story. You didn't. It starts like any fairy tale. An ogre in a swamp, a princess in a tower, a kingdom that looks perfect from the outside. But almost immediately, something feels off. The ogre lives alone, not just physically but psychologically. He has routines, boundaries, reactions that trigger before anything even happens. He expects rejection before it arrives. That's not instinct. That's conditioning. That's what happens when the world treats you like a monster long enough, that you start behaving like one just to stay in control. In folklore, ogres don't adapt. They don't build systems around themselves. This one does, which means the story didn't just get him wrong, it shaped him. And then the world shows up anyway. Fairy tale creatures flood his swamp. Not one story, all of them, mixed together, disconnected from where they're supposed to be. And that's the first real break in the logic, because fairy tales aren't supposed to overlap like this. They're closed systems, self-contained. But here, something has merged them, flattened them, turned them into parts of the same structure. A wooden boy who wanted to be real. Creatures with their own rules, their own endings, now reduced to the same status, displaced, collected, moved, like inventory. And that only makes sense if there's something organizing them, something deciding where they go, and what happens to them. Duloc looks like the answer. At first it feels harmless. Clean streets, straight lines, perfect symmetry. The same song plays over and over again, like the world is trying to stabilize itself through repetition. Like if everything stays predictable, nothing can go wrong. But then you notice what's missing. The fairy tale creatures aren't part of it. They're not integrated. They're removed, rounded up, transported somewhere else. Not because they're dangerous, because they don't belong, because they disrupt the image, because they make the system harder to control. And the man in charge never touches any of it. He doesn't need to. He builds systems that do it for him. Systems that decide who stays, who gets moved, and who disappears from the visible world entirely. And that's the moment where it stops feeling like a fairy tale and starts feeling familiar, not in a loud way, in a quiet one, like something you've seen before, just simplified, cleaned up, easier to accept, and when there's one last obstacle between him and complete control, he doesn't solve it himself. He assigns it to something already outside the system, the ogre, because if it fails, it doesn't matter, and if it succeeds, the system stays clean. So Shrek goes, not because he believes in the story, because the structure around him leaves no alternative, and as soon as he leaves Duloc, the world starts to lose its shape. The further he gets from that controlled environment, the less stable everything becomes. The rules loosen, the logic stretches, and then you see the tower again. Out there, isolated, surrounded by lava, no roads, no supply lines, no visible way anyone could have survived there for years. But someone did, and something stayed with her. The dragon isn't passing through. It lives there. That matters, Because now it's not just guarding something, it's part of a contained environment, a closed system. Knights tried to get in. The film makes that clear. You see what's left of them. Armor, weapons, bones, not scattered randomly, clustered, repeated, like the same outcome happened over and over again. They didn't fail differently. They failed the same way, which means something inside that system is consistent, predictable. Shrek breaks that pattern. He gets in, finds the princess, wakes her, and for a moment, everything snaps back into place. The story behaves. The princess is rescued. The journey continues, but it doesn't hold. Because on the way back, something breaks again. A man drops from the trees, confident, performative, playing the role he thinks he's in. And it collapses instantly, because Fiona doesn't need saving. She doesn't hesitate, doesn't react. She acts, fast, controlled, efficient, like this isn't new, like she's done this before, and that shouldn't be possible. No one reached her. No one trained her. She's been alone in that tower since childhood, which means the tower wasn't empty. Not really. Something was happening in there. Something the story doesn't show you directly. Later that night, you get the second fracture. She transforms, not into something new, into something she's been suppressing. And suddenly, everything recontextualizes. The isolation, the dragon, the bones, because now there are only two explanations. Either the dragon was guarding her, or it was containing her, and the film refuses to choose. It just leaves the evidence in front of you, and moves on. Once you see that, the rest of the world stops feeling random. It starts feeling constructed. Even the parts that seemed like comic relief. Take the donkey. At first he's just noise, constant, chaotic, harmless. But he attaches instantly, doesn't leave, doesn't stop talking, like silence isn't safe. And in another story, there was a place where boys were turned into donkeys. Slowly, completely. Most of them never came back. But something here did. And whatever came back didn't come back the same. The film never confirms it. It doesn't need to, because by now you understand the pattern. This world doesn't explain itself. It implies. It shows outcomes without showing the process. And underneath all of it, there's structure. A system that takes separate stories, flattens them, and reorganizes them into something cleaner, something easier to control, something that looks like a fairy tale, but behaves like something else. This wasn't accidental. This world feels artificial, because it was built that way, a reaction to stories that had become too perfect, too controlled, too polished to question. Duloc isn't subtle. It's supposed to feel off, a place where everything works, as long as you don't look too closely. Because the moment you do, you see what it's built on: removal, control, rewriting what doesn't fit, and presenting what remains as something simple, something safe, something familiar. Shrek doesn't break that system. It exposes it quietly. It lets the story play out, just long enough for you to notice the cracks, the bones at the entrance, the dragon that never leaves, the princess who was never what she seemed, the system that decides who belongs and who doesn't. Nothing actually gets resolved. The structure doesn't collapse. The rules don't disappear. The story just resets. And next time, you probably won't notice it either.